Howdy doody, class. This is your professor, Mr. Dawson. I'm going to teach you how to create cactus. I always begin my intros by saying the word so or let's begin, and it's becoming too much of a trend, so gotta change it up a little bit. Alright, if you guys think of like a really cool intro for me to say, then put it on the comments or something and I'll try to do it. I was told to do like different voices, different accents, but that would be probably too distracting. Okay, so let's begin. Underneath the View tab, you have this button that says Image Plane, and it's going to allow us to import an image plane when we click on Import Image. Right, so it's right here under View, Image Plane, Import Image. Now you can see that I'm actually doing this in my front view. You could do this in the side view. The reason why I'm importing an image plane in my front view is because this is the direction where I want my cactus to be. And of course I can do this in my side view and import the image plane and always move it around. So let's go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. So I'm going to look for my cactus image, my first cactus image. And I'm going to put all three images in here. So this is image shape 1, well, cactus shapes. And I'll zoom out a little bit. It's probably hard to find this thing. And you know what? If I press 4, it's right here. Press W, I'll move this guy up, and I'll put it off to the side. It doesn't matter how big or how small I scale this image up, I can always scale the geometry down. Okay, so I'm going to repeat this 2 more times. The reason why I'm using this particular image here is because you can see on the texture it says I stock by getting images. Okay, that's not really important. We're not going to use this image per se, but we're going to use a geometry. So is that it has color value to represent the grooves in a cactus versus the actual grooves themselves. So this is going to be, I think, the easier method of creating our cactus shape. Alright, the next image plane that we're going to import is going to be, it's like I forgot to set my project, so let me do that now. If I go to File, Set Project, set it to my cactus, my floating island scene, and now when I go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, it takes me directly to my source images. Alright, so I'll take that image, I'll move it over here. This image here, you guys can see, has the undulations and the folding of the cactus, so we're going to use a different method. There's several methods to create this. We'll go over each one at a time, and like I said, you can choose your medicine and which method you prefer. And then I have other images of cactuses, and a lot of these have the same kind of like folding undulations. I think this is going to be a really fun one to create. Okay, it will require some counting and one more image. Okay, now for this particular assignment, you are not required to have 800 different types of I got a double one. Okay, so 800 different types of cactuses in there, right? Or cacti. You can use one and modify that shape. So I'll start off with the easier one, easier image first, and then we'll move on. All right. So I'm going to take all 3 of these image planes. I'm going to go into my perspective view, and I'm going to move them to the right. The reason why I'm doing that is because, let's see, let me turn my grid on. You can see that when it imports this image, it puts it directly on the axis line. If I were to create a polygon plane and draw that right here, it's very difficult to see that. If I move it over here, there's my polygon plane, but if I move it here, it's just an outline, okay? So the reason why I'm going to my perspective view and highlighting all three image planes and moving them a little further back is so that I can avoid that problem. So create polygon plane, and I'll move it in front, and there we go. Okay? So I'm simply going to use the method I've taught you guys before, simple tool called extrude, and I'm going to trace this shape. Now I can start from here and extrude, press W, move it up. I can press R to flatten that out, R to scale it wide. If I press G, it's the repeat tool, which is extrude. Move it up, press R, scale it wide. And then I get to this section here where the cactus actually splits off. So I'll extrude it one more time. I'll move it up like that. And then I'll take this vertex point and move it to where I believe that new cactus begins. And then I'll take this vertex, or this edge, I'll move it. And now, before I go any further, I'm just going to move a few vertices around. Alright. Go back to the edge, extrude. Now, this is another method of doing it extremely fast. Just move this all the way up here, like that. And then I can use the Insert Edge Loop tool, which is found under Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. I'll go to the option box. Relative distance from edge will allow me to create one edge loop at a time. If I click on the multiple edge loops and change that to 2, it will actually subdivide it a few more times. Okay, so I'll take this vertex, move it, take this one here, move it there, take that vertex, move it there, and you can see it's a little faster than the other method. Some of you guys will prefer to do it this way or the other way. Okay? I think speed is always key ingredient to working on large projects, and also making sure that it looks correct. Alright, so let's do the same thing with this guy. Control E, I'll move it all the way up to the top. I'll press R to scale it down, like this. And then we'll use the Insert Edge Loop tool again. Oops. So I'll go to the shortcut for the Insert Edge Loop tool is if you hold Shift, you can right mouse click and hold, and then look, Insert Edge Loop right there. So I'll take that vertex, move it over, that vertex, move it over, that one here, that one there. And you're probably like wondering, okay, this thing or this cactus is extremely flat. Worry about it, I got you. We're going to give it some roundness a little bit later. So I'm just switching my Insert Edge Loop tool back to relative distance. As soon as I use the Insert Edge Loop tool, I can press R immediately, and that's going to give me access to the scale tool. If I press 4, I can see it in wireframe, and it will also give me just another opportunity to see this shape, the image underneath the geometry. If I press 5, then I see it in shaded mode. There's another method I'll show you guys. It's really quick and efficient. If I go to Create Curve tool, EP Curve, I can create the shape of the cactus like this. Right? That's the shape of the cactus. That shape. And then I can select this edge here, hold Shift, select that EP curve and then press Control E to extrude. Now it doesn't look like much right now until I insert divisions, and voila, look at it. Okay, and then from here I'll simply take those vertices and move them over. So as you just seen, there are different methods to this project. Now the issue, or I'm not going to say issue, but if you do it this way with the curve, look what happens when I move the geometry. Oops. Nothing, right? But what happens when I move the curve? It is attached to that. So there's history attached to this geometry. So I would simply click on the geometry itself, and you can see in my channel box editor all of this stuff here. This is called history. We want to delete that. So we go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and it's gone. Alright, and I can delete the curve now. I'll probably add another Insert Edge Loop tool to the top, press R to scale it wide. Another one down here, go to the vertex, and voila. I'm happy with this. It's not perfect. Kind of make the top part a little more round. Okay. Now it's always important for us to rename these things, so I'll call this Cactus Jack. Cactus one. I call this Cactus. Alright, now the next element to this is to give it thickness. Right? Now you can see that this face right here is like curved, and that's because of the geometry, the curve that we use to extrude it from. If that ever happens to you, I always go to vertex mode, highlight all the vertices, press R, and scale it flat. See? Okay. Now let's give this thickness. Very simple. Control E, and then move it forward like that. Now it's thick. And if I go to my Insert Edge Loop tool and add an edge loop right down the center, I can press R, which is the scale tool, and scale it fit. Now what you're going to notice is that it does get a little bit wider here, but let's go into this view. On the inside of this shape, it's going in the opposite direction. So how do you avoid that? Well, you're going to have to do some manual work, okay? I would probably start off by clicking on this edge, hold Shift, double click here, press W, and then move it out manually like that, okay? I can click on this edge, go underneath, hold Shift, and double click, just like that edge loop, move it out manually, alright? So that's that particular method. And when we get finished with that, we can simply press 3 and it rounds it up. So it's kind of cartoony, alright? On to the next cactus shape. Well, let's actually camp out here one more time. We're going to do this really elaborate cactus shape. And we're going to actually use a tool called Create Polygon tool. Alright? The Create Polygon tool will allow us to outline this shape. And you can see I'm not worried about getting this to look precise. I'm kind of creating a really low polygon, making sure that I have a pretty good edge flow, or the faces are going to be distributed properly. Alright, and if at any time this gets confusing, like you're working and you're creating this shape and it like crosses each other, you can simply press 4 to go in the wireframe and do that. Now with this method, I think it might take a little bit longer because you'll have to use the multi-cut tool to create quads. And I'll just end it right here. I won't go all the way up. So now I have that shape and it's black. I have to go to Mesh Display Reverse, and then of course use a multi-cut tool, which will take quite some time to connect your vertices so that you have quads. Alright, and this is going to be the same exact method as I told you before. You'll extrude it and you'll give it thickness. Now, the fun way, before I even do the fun way, I'm going to save it before my machine starts to crash on me. So I'll call this Cactus underscore 001. This method, we can use different ways of creating it. I'm going to use the EP curve to create the very, very top of this, which I think looks something like this. Let me use green color for the cactus. And so this is a shape that I think the top of that looks like. I think it looks like this from the very top. Right? Something like that. And then it gets bigger and it repeats the same type of shape. Right? I don't think I'm going crazy, but that's what it kind of looks like to me, just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to create that shape by using a tool called the EP curve. Now you can use the EP curve tool, or you can use a pencil tool. The pencil tool for me is a little more fluid. However, it will add more control points. And you might say, what's the problem with having more control points? Well, it results in heavier geometry. So I'll use the EP curve tool. Ooh, better yet, I'll use a NURB circle. All right. So I'm going to create NURBS primitive, and then go to NURB circle, and that's my circle. Now if I go to right mouse click and hold and go to control vertex, I have just a limited number of vertices to work on this shape. So I'm going to increase the number of, oh, I know it's going to crash. I knew it. Anytime I go into the inputs in 2018 on this particular machine, it does that. So thank God I saved it before, and we're going to change the number of control vertices in a different way. So wait for this to load up. File, open recent files, and under the recent files, when the wheel of death goes away, I will be able to select my cactus. What was Remzo for? Okay, well, I'll open it up from here. Animation 1, floating island scene, my scenes folder, and my cactus 01. Don't save. Okay. So I'll go to create, NURBS primitive, interactive turned on, and then create a circle. Now I'm not going to repeat the same mistake as I did before. This time I'll simply go to curves, rebuild option box, and right now it's set to 4. I'll change that to 8. And when I do that, now I have more control vertex points, but I'm going to increase that. So curves, rebuild, and I'll change that to 12. Apply. Let's see. I have more points. So I'm just hold shift and select every other point or every other control vertex. Press R and scale it down. I don't think I have enough control vertex points. So I'll change the number of span to, let's say, 20. Apply. And now when I right mouse click and hold, I have more points on here. I'll do this, that, bam, bam, bam. I'll press R to scale them in, and voila. Okay, so this is going to be the very tip of my cactus. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this shape, and it's going to start off extremely small here, and I'll scale it up a little bit wider there. I'll scale it up wider. I'll move it over. I'll scale it up wider, move it over, so that I have different layers of that curve I just created. And then we're going to use a tool called Loft. So I'll scale this down really small. I'll press E to turn on my rotation. I'll hold J to snap it discreetly. Press W and I'll move it right there at the top. Okay. So now I'm going to press Control D. I'll move it up and I'll scale it up a little wider. Control D, move it up, scale it up much wider. Control D. I think you guys understand the process, right? If I was to make this cactus accurate, I would have more images and I would probably count the number of ridges, but for the sake of this tutorial, I would just kind of keep it very simple. And I'm doing that, scale it up a little bit more. Maybe we move it over. And I can do things individually to this curve that will actually give it a little bit more personality. It doesn't look so linear, which means so robotic and so like rigid. Make it look more natural, I guess is the term I was looking for. Control D. I'm almost there. Bear with me. I know some people like to watch tutorials where it's sped up and the person talks over it. I personally like to watch tutorials where the person is showing me their method and their thought process, is cracking a few jokes, but you can always fast forward this. All right, and last but not least, the bottom. Okay, now this is the fun part. All right, I personally want to make this a polygon, so I have to change a few parameters so that it becomes a polygon and not a NURBS. Polygon because of texturing reasons. I don't like the textured NURBS, so I always convert everything to a poly. So I'm going to start off with the center, the smallest one. Okay, I'll hold Shift and select one at a time. If I select everything at once, then the order is off. So do that, this, that, this, that one, and that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we go to Surfaces, Loft option box, and you can see by default it's set to NURBS. I'm going to change it to Polygon, Quads, General, change it to the last option under the U type and the V type. And if I change the number of U and V to a really low number like 1 and click apply, then you can see that this polygon or this cactus is really, really low poly. But if I wanted it to be round, I can simply click on the geometry, press 3, and it gives me the somewhat of the resolution I want. But if I wanted the geometry to have more poly count, then I increase the number of U and the number of V to 3, click apply, and look at it. It's much more poly count, but maybe I don't need as many polygons in the V, but I want more in the U. So sometimes this takes some, tweaking, and that looks pretty good to me. I'll press close. I'll select that geometry and I can press 3, and voila. Now the reason why I will not delete all of these curves just yet is because I can do some really fun stuff with them. I can scale them, I can rotate them, and this gives my cactus a little bit more personality now. You see? I can rotate that, I can do this. I could even go so far as to selecting one of those curves, clicking on the control vertex point, and maybe even moving that control vertex point forward or to the right and giving that a little more personality. Now I know time is of the essence, so we don't have a lot of time to do that and make it unique. Okay? Alright, so the center of this obviously needs to be closed. So I'll click on that edge loop by double clicking it. I'll go to Edit Mesh, and then our mesh fill hole. Voila. Okay. I'll go to Modify Center Pivot. Okay. And then we could simply take this shape, duplicate it, move it here, scale it down. We can go to the vertex, highlight the vertices, press B, which is a soft selection, hold B to make the influence down a little lower. And now I can like move this thing around. I can rotate it a little bit, press W, move it down. I'm going to press Control to deselect vertices. Press Control again to deselect a few vertices. Rotate it. Move it here. Right? Control to deselect more vertices. I'm just deselecting the vertices. If I press B, you can see that Control allows me to deselect the selection. So I'm going to press B again. Right? I'll press E to rotate. Press W, right? Kind of get it there. If I click on an edge, double click, it will allow me to select what we consider the edge loop. So double click, and I can move that around, you see? Double click, move that around to try to get that same position. Double click that edge loop, press R to scale it up. So again, this is, you know, for a person that's really focusing on accuracy, right? I can double click on this edge loop, press B, right? Move that there, double click on this one, move it up, rotate it, right? W, move it there. And then that last one there. So I'll press B again. I'll select the faces here that I don't need, delete. I'll press 5. I'll go to the vertices. I'll take this guy here and move it in. Press R to scale it down. Press W. Kind of shove that right in there. And we're going to repeat the same exact process on the right side. So that's looking pretty cool. I could take this one, Control D, move it over, press E, hold J to rotate it, and then move this into place. I can click on edge, double click this edge, move it over, press R to scale it wide, double click, press W, move it over, press R to scale a little bit wider to try to match that same geometry. If I hold shift, I can double click multiple edge loops and move it there. You see? Press R, scale it up. Double click, scale it up. And at any time, if you want to like rotate this, you can, you know. Just give it a little personality, a little flair. A little Ric Flair. For those of you that know 80s wrestling, 90s wrestling. Alright, let's get that to match. That's the whole point, is working on a little bit of accuracy. Again, you have the freedom to do whatever it is that you want. I know cactuses aren't perfect like the way I'm making mine. So, there we go. And then we'll take that little section there. I can go to vertex at any time, select the vertices, scale them down. Press W, move it in. Alright, so once I get finished with this shape, I'm going to highlight all three, go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, Modify, Freeze Transformation, and then Control G to turn it into a group. which I will call Cactus 2. Now, within this group, I can select the individual parts, but if I press the up arrow, it selects the group itself. Now I need to go to Modify Center Pivot to move my center pivot, and I can move this guy anywhere. Now the cool thing is I still have this shape, all right? And this shape I can use for, or these curves I can use for this object here, right? So I'm going to move this guy up. Maybe I'll delete those guys. I'll delete those. And I have the round part of this object. I'll turn this section into a lofted object. Oops. So I'm holding Shift, Surfaces, Loft. I'll take that curve and I'll scale it down a little bit so that it looks round. Okay. And then simply just take that shape, that geometry, modify center pivot. I'll go back to my front view and move it here. I'll press 3. I'll press 4 to kind of get it to match up properly. And then I'll press 5 to go back to soft selected. Sorry, smooth shaded. Control D, move it down. Press R to scale it up. Press W to move it up like this. And again, you can select rows of vertices, or you can select rows of edges and double click and scale it wide. Okay. And I think you get the drift. And last but not least, let me do this. And I'll select the last little row, I'll scale it down, make it smaller. This part will be in the ground, so I'm really not worried about making it completely round because it will be on top of our sand dune. You can select multiple rows of vertices, and then I'll hold Shift, I'll go to my perspective view. I'm going to select this bottom edge. I'm actually going to extrude it again. So Control E to extrude, press W, move it down, press R to scale it down so it looks a bit more natural. I'll do the same thing with that edge. Alright, so I have these three. Modify, freeze transformation, edit, delete by type, history. We'll press Control G, modify center pivot, and I'll call this round cactus. And then we could take this entire group and I'll go to my front view. If I hold D and move the manipulator tool down, I can actually put this onto the surface. Press R and it will scale from there. If I press E, it can rotate any direction I want. I'll do the same thing with this group. Press the up arrow. I'll hold D and move the manipulator down in the Y-axis. Let go of D. I'll hold V to snap it to a point. Press R, scale it down. And voila. So we have two different types of cactus. Well, three if you want to include the cartoony one. And you can change the shape and size. So I think that scale is going to be extremely important, right? So making sure that some of them are much smaller than others, that it looks really good in your camera, how it transitions from the sand dune to like this mountainous shape. And that is the end of this tutorial. I hope you guys like it and share it with your friends and family. They'll know how cool this is.